Hello. I don't see anyone yet. I'm just cleaning up this desk here a little bit so you don't have too many things distracting while I'm doing this little presentation here. I feel like I got lots of things in the way from last time. So I'm just going to move some things while I wait for folks to check in. Clean up a hair when you're not distracted. And I'm not distracted by my stuff. Let's make sure I've got enough room to do all this too. Here we go. I think that's pretty good. Better anyway. Cute picture. Thanks, Mom. It's a little chibi girl. I thought if Marley joins us today that she would like chibi girl. Nope. Now I've got another person checking in. All right. Gina and Marley are here too. Then my two favorite people have joined. Let's get started. So today I thought we could do a try it with coloring. I found these little free chibi girl, or this chibi girl image. There were others, but they didn't want to fit on a sheet of paper. And then I have some other things too. So I wanted to first talk about kind of the basics of coloring. You love it. Good. The basics of coloring with 2 different mediums or 3 different mediums, but there's, of course, you can color with anything, right? You can, crayons, pencils, markers, there's different kinds of markers, so we can do whatever. I thought I'd spend more time on the alcohol markers. This was from online, and I shared it in the event if you wanted to look at it. I just grabbed it from online. I do have coloring books and things here, though, too, to show you. But I thought I'd spend a little extra time on the markers because I know Miss Marley has these fantastic alcohol markers, and they're a little bit new to her. But we'll do some coloring with other things, too, I think. So first, when you think about coloring, you want to think about the medium that you're going to use, right? So for this chibi girl, for example, I printed her on 2 different kinds of paper. This is just regular, thin, flimsy, kind of see-through-ish copy paper. I would not, personally, I would not use a marker, alcohol marker especially, but really any marker on this type of paper because it's going to go right through. So if I move this around here for a second, if I grab one of my alcohol markers and I'm just going to put a little spot on here, right, soaks right through. And it also doesn't blend very well because this paper is just too thin. But this would be fine for crayon. This is absolutely fine for colored pencil. I just went and used marker because it's going to soak through and it's not going to blend very well. So then I also printed out my little chibi girl, Ballerina, on a, this is a not a cardstock, well, it's kind of it's a thicker paper, not quite a cardstock, but close. And it's very smooth. This should work much better with my markers if I do a little blobby here. Right, a little bit soaked through, but this is much better. And this is going to blend nicer. So for alcohol markers, this is what I would use. Now this is a really big image for me to color. Typically, when I do my coloring personally, I wouldn't color a chibi or another image this big. Usually it's more kind of in this size range, maybe a little bit bigger. But I don't ordinarily color these super big chibi images. But that doesn't mean I can't. I just don't ordinarily. So this will be a fun try it because, like I said, I don't usually color that big. This would ordinarily be more my sphere. This I actually This is a stamped image from a stamp set. So the stamp set I have is right here. This is a stamped image. And I put this on a scrap of that cardstock paper from when we were doing the stenciling last week again. So it's thicker, right? It's got a little vellum coating. Let's just see for soak through. Sometimes it's just good to test stuff and see. Yeah, a little bit, but not bad. And it felt like it blended pretty nice. This one maybe isn't quite as good as this cardstock, but still really good. I would still probably be okay with marker on here, but pencil would work really nice on this too, because this is a thin, it doesn't have a lot of tooth in it. When I use pencil, I don't like using toothy paper. So texture is important too, right? I don't like to use a roll, like if you think of a watercolor paper, it's gritty, it's bumpy, has texture or tooth, as they call it. I don't like that for colored pencil because I feel like it makes the pencil look all bumpy. You can see the texture when you color with it. Marker's not quite as bad, although it seems like it soaks up more of the marker ink, but this is a smooth, it doesn't have a tooth. This I'd be fine using colored pencil on too, just like these other two papers I showed you. You can also do a coloring book. Now, I like coloring in coloring books. I do probably more pencil than I do marker in coloring books. And that's for a couple of reasons. The primary one of which is that, if I have a sheet, I'm looking for a sheet of paper. I always worry about the coloring books, again, soaking through. So for this, I'd probably want to put, like I have here, a piece of paper or something. And this one's nice because it's one-sided. So again, think about what you're going to use on here. If you use regular marker or alcohol marker, you'd always want to make sure your other page is blank, because the chances would be really good you'd color on it and it would soak through and it's going to ruin whatever image is on the other side. This one is single-sided, so that is a great start. I do think it gets a little soak through, but let's just try a little spot here and see. Yep, it does. It soaks through pretty easy, and you can see it even soaked through on here. So if I were going to use an alcohol marker, and I don't know, water-based might be the same. And this I think would be really pretty with an alcohol marker. But I'd want to make sure I have a sheet of cardstock between it, otherwise it's going to ruin this image on the other side. Right, so more likely I would use probably pencil. And that's usually why I use pencil in my coloring books. Every once in a while, I'll find a good deal on a coloring book that is made for Copics or markers, and the paper is much thicker and it doesn't soak through as easy. But even then, if you get really crazy with your coloring, it will probably soak through. Another important thing, if you do decide to stamp or print, this print from my printer, this is a laser printer. So I know confidently that my markers, my Copics especially, my alcohol-based markers, are not going to pick up and smudge the black ink. If I used a inkjet, it is possible that I would end up having that smudge, and I think I have had that in the past. Same thing with the stamps. There are certain kinds of stamp ink that you can use when you use an alcohol-based marker versus ink that you shouldn't use with an alcohol-based marker. If you're not sure, again, test it and see if your ink is going to work or if it's going to smudge. And if it's going to smudge, maybe don't color it with the marker. Yeah, so Marley had one and the markers did come through. Yes. Yep. Oh, yeah. The state of Wisconsin on your kitchen table. There you go. Wow. On Wisconsin, I guess. But yes, always check and use a mat underneath if it leaks through. That's one of the reasons why I really like this glass mat. It wipes off. So if I did have a problem like that, that would clean off of here. But alcohol marker, especially those new cool markers I got Marley, they're pretty permanent when they dry. So you're not going to get that marker out of stuff. Okay, so as we think about coloring, let's just do the colored pencils quick, and then we'll do a little bit of, or more of the marker. I like good quality colored pencils. These are Prismacolor Premier. I got them on a really good deal, I don't know, Black Friday a couple years ago. And when I think about coloring something like this, I like to do shading. That's what makes it look cool. And the same thing goes with the markers, right? But we'll start out with the pencils. Now in these pencils, they have, I don't know, it says peach, and then there's this color code. I've yet to figure out what the color code means. I'm sure there's something online somewhere that explains it. I would hope. But I don't know what it is. I haven't found it yet. And I'm thinking right now about the colors of pink that I'd want to use for her dress. And when you do coloring and blending, the one thing they recommend is using 3 colors, right? A light, a medium, and a dark. That gives you the best kind of color variation when you're coloring. I'll do the same thing when I do the markers. There's all kinds of different people that will tell you to do this in different orders. I say test it and see what works for you. Some of it is how hard you color. Some of it is if you push versus pull. But what I'm saying is, like, you could do this whole section light, right? So if I wanted to do, this is my lightest pink, I think. It's actually more of a peachy. Probably not my favorite pink here, but that's okay. And I'd probably use the same, I would use the same peach for her skin, and then use, and sometimes you don't have multiple colors of skin. Like I think I only have 2 kind of skin peach colors, but then I might use that and this pink, right? Okay, and then you might want to go to the darkest, and I would use the darkest kind of on the seam, right? What I'm trying to do is create the look and feel of a shadow with these pleats. These pleats would be a little bit deeper here in where they meet, right? They're going to be a little bit, especially here, so I'm going to put even a little bit more pressure in the very middle. We might have her little arm shadow here, her little dress shadow, right? Maybe back here by her head, I think we would have a shadow, right? So we're just kind of building out this shadow effect. Then you could take the middle one, and the middle one's job is to kind of blend out between the dark and the light. And this is the way generally I like to do it. Some people will start with the dark and go to the light, or start with the light and go to the dark. But when I use pencils especially, I kind of like this strategy a little bit. I feel like I can get a better blend out of it this way, where I go the lightest, the darkest, and then use the middle to kind of even it up. Right, and you get to see all my left-handed coloring magic here. Right, and just blend it out. So now you can see it went from just something that's one-dimensional to something that has more of a lifelike look and feel to it, right? Isn't that better? And I might even bring that in a little bit more. Some of it is the pressure that I'm applying, and some of it is the color of the pencil, right? That lets me really kind of even it out and blend it. So look at that. Now, like I said, with the face, we could do, well, let's not do her face. I'm going to do her arm because it's just less to color for this example. So this is my lightest. And I just like to put that down as a nice base. good start going. And then this is my darkest here. I'm going to press on this really light because this is a really pinky pink. So I'm not going to go crazy with it. Just add a little bit of shadow, and then I can take this medium color again and blend that out a little bit. Give her a little more definition here. There we go. So that's kind of the gist, right? And then I could say, oh, I need a little more light. Let's make my light a little bit darker. A little bit more blending in. And that's what I like about these Prismacolor Premiums. They have a nice, soft lead. So they blend a little bit easier than if you get a cheaper, harder pencil. I feel like they don't blend as well. Crayons blend awesome too. I don't happen to have any crayons here, but that's an example. I also thought we could do, where does this one go? One of these days I've got to arrange these so I have them in a better order. I talked about coloring with watercolor pencils back, I don't know, a few weeks ago now when we did watercolor painting. Marley, you missed that one. So I might have to do another, but I talked about coloring with watercolor pencils, which I also like. Watercolor pencils are a little bit softer yet, and you can color with them without using the water. So I thought that might be interesting to try. I think I'm going to make her kind of a sandy blonde here. See, these are a little bit better order, I feel. Like Roy G. Biv in a variety of shades. Again, I'm sure these are Arteza. I'm sure there's a color code methodology with these too. I just don't happen to know what it is. But they do a really good job of kind of labeling what the colors are, which I like. And these are fat. They have fluorescence and everything, right? So I have a turmeric, a burnt okra, and a honey. And sometimes if you're not sure, I think this is the lightest one. Especially I would say this with the marker, right? Color a little bit and just kind of see what they look like. Yeah, and this one's pretty dark, but I actually think that this one, if I press on it lighter, it's probably really the lighter of the two. So I'm going to give her some blonde hair. Again, I won't do all of her head, but let's do a section of her hair here. I'm just going to start in these. Like I said, I like these a lot because they're even softer lead yet than the pencil, which means they're going to go on nice and smooth and they blend really nice. And if I felt like then adding some water and blending them out even more, I could. I won't today, but, and this isn't really a watercolor paper, but you could, and you can just color with them just like a colored pencil, which is awesome. And I know Mommy said you never used watercolor pencils before, and I think they're great because they give you all the benefits of a colored pencil, plus you can watercolor with them, where your regular colored pencil you could not. All right. Now let's go to this darker one. I think this chunk of hair here is pretty much behind her head. I think that's just going to be darker overall. All right, add some darkness here. This will be dark in here. All right, just think about kind of shadows and light. Also helps, like I have a kind of light sitting here, even helps me kind of think about if the light was coming from here, right, where would the shadow be? right? My shadows are kind of going this way. So maybe that's what I do with her. I make her hair kind of reflective of the shadow that I have right here in the room, so that it's nice and consistent and not all kinds of random shadows that doesn't follow the rule of light, right? What look like with the light shining on it. And then I'm going to take, is it this one that I thought was the middle? Yeah. This, and just kind of blend it in. Just like so. And this is the first time I've really done shading with these without water. This is pretty interesting because I feel like this actually almost pulls and makes the other color even a little more vibrant, which is really pretty cool. Alright, so it's all about just trying new things, which this was a new thing. Usually I would have added water and not just done straight pencil blend. And you don't know how things are going to work unless you try them. And I like this. But I didn't know it would work quite this way, so I think that's really cool. There we go. I'm going back to the lighter one. And it's all about adding layers and blending and just getting it to look the way you want it to look. There we go. See, now that hair has some texture to it. Yay! So I think these went here. Whoop, sorry about that. Here. Wow. I'm making a lot of noise. I apologize. There we go. Almost. Okay. Get in there. There you go. So there's colored pencils. Super quick, just basic. I love coloring with colored pencils. Like I said, when I do my coloring book coloring, I do almost all colored pencil. Now, let's do coloring. It's so relaxing. It is. Now let's do alcohol markers. So I have two types of alcohol markers. I have my fancy pantsy Copic markers, which are very expensive. And for a long time, these were the marker. They were like the only type and of alcohol marker. And you know, they're like, I don't know, $5 a marker. Unless you buy a set like this, it's a little bit cheaper. But I think I paid over $100 for this set. I'm sure I paid over $100 for this set. Now, thankfully, there are lots of companies that make alcohol markers, not just Copic. A lot of them that are very good. This one is Blick. I thought I wanted to try these markers too because I heard such good things about them. I bought a set for my niece Marley, who's on here today. So she could color with some Copic markers. She needed some new markers. But I heard such good things that I wanted to try them for myself. Now with the Copics, one of the things that was supposed to make them more valuable is the fact that you can refill them. I have never refilled mine, but you can. I have a couple that probably could be refilled that have to get the inks, but you can. And I have the Copic, I think they're called, I don't know, Cow, I have no idea. CIAO. So these are like a student marker, they're called. They're skinny. They have a big marker called a Sketch, or it's bigger, that they sell as well. These were cheaper, work just as well. With the Copics, they have this color code on them. So the first part of the code is a letter that tells you what color. Here's G. G, as you might suspect, stands for green, right? Here's one that starts out Y, which stands for yellow. And you'll see the same thing with the alcohol markers as far as kind of that letter. That's where things get different. With the Copics, you then see two numbers. I'm making sure you can see these. You see two numbers. And this one is 0, 2, for example, and this one is 2, 1. It's not Y02 and it's not G21. Each color means their own thing. If I get two yellows, for example, this is a good illustration of that. The first number, so in both cases it is a 0. That is saturation. The second number is brightness or darkness. Each number goes 0 through 9. So for example, in the 8 family, this has very little saturation, largely because it's a yellow, but it's an 8. So it's going to be a darker versus brighter color. Where this one is a 2, this is going to be much brighter. If we look at, I think the greens, I like that too, right? Here's a yellow green. So in some cases you see two letters, right? So yellow green. Here's a yellow green, right? 6, 7, and 4, 1. So saturation and brightness. And when you think about then color blending, if you're going to use that methodology of 3, you could do a yellow green with a straight green like this. You could do a yellow green also with a yellow if you wanted to go more on the light side instead of just a straight green. So lots of different options. Or you could stay all with yellow greens, just when you kind of think about blending. And you can with these markers blend even non-like colors, but sometimes it turns muddy. So that's just a good kind of general rule if you're going to use a Copic. Now, if you want to use these straight Blick markers, and I think most marker companies are going to be the same generally. Right here are the letters again. You can probably hopefully see them. So you have your yellow green, YG, right? BG, blue green, E. We didn't talk about E yet. E is earth tone. So any of your kind of brown colors. Here we have a black. This particular black is an N black, which means it's a neutral. There's also usually a W and a C. So a W would be a warm black and a C would be a cool black, right? So that's the same thing. Like here, I have a gray Copic and it's a C5. So that tells me it's a cool gray with a 5 in terms of lightness or darkness versus this cool gray that I have here that's a 7 is going to be darker. And then as far as the numbers, I'm not as sure as to what they mean. But I can look on here and kind of get a gauge of what's lighter or darker, and always, you can always test it on a piece of paper. So now if we wanted to color Little Miss Chibi, I might use, let's see, I've got a blush. This is a red. And this plum for really dark, I think. And then maybe this earth tone pale pink. I wouldn't ordinarily mix those all together, I don't think, but we're going to give it a shot. Because it's all about trying, right? If I was going to do the pink with my Copics, I would do, like I usually just grab all my pinks and then kind of look at what I've got. And I have an E4, which is an earth tone, so that's not really a pink. Here's an RV, red violet. Here's an RV and an RV. So I'd probably do the RVs, and I would say, all right, which is the darkest, that's the last number. I have 1, 2, 3. So this is probably the colors in that order, and then I would try them on a piece of paper just to make sure, because the caps don't necessarily line up. I might say, well, maybe that's not the darkest or the lightest. So that's how I usually just with this set because I don't have the whole Copic set. I just have this set that I showed you. So I would just kind of play around with it a little bit on the paper or on a different piece of paper to see what I've got. So I'm going to do the same thing, I think, here with these two, just to see kind of what they look like. And these markers, just like the Copics, also have this. They have two nibs. There's this brush nib or the chisel nib. Same ink on either end. It's just how you prefer to color. When you're coloring a really big area, the chisel nib's a little bit nicer. Holds more ink. That's really bright. Let's see how this looks. And those two are really close. So this will be interesting. I'm wondering what this... No, we'll go with this. Okay. So for these alcohol markers, for these, I think what I'll try is, no, I usually do like to, especially with a big area, I like, again, to put the light down first. And you just color small sections. You saw me do that with the colored pencil. And I do the same thing with the marker. I do small sections at a time, especially with the marker because it will dry in between. For this one, I do go lighter, medium, and dark. But it'll dry in between, and you don't want it to necessarily dry. So I say, do a tiny section at a time. I could have even left a little bit of light in there. So this one I started light to dark, and then we'll do the next one dark to light just to kind of see how that goes, right? And this you're going to do multiple layers for sure, because this particular pink is really dark. But you're going to get to see kind of the magic of alcohol inks. So now I'm going to go back in with this middle color, and I'm actually going to what they call pull it. So I'm going to use this middle color to pull this dark color forward and blend with it. And that's why, again, you want to do this when this is relatively wet, or it's not going to work very well. And this is why, again, I'm getting lots of soak through, which is fine because I'm on this glass mat. So just another reason why you want to make sure you have the right kind of paper for what you're doing. Right, and just pull it, pull it, pull it. And of course, the more even of the color that you're using you do, the more it's going to get darker. Just like anything else, really. And I'm going to try the dark first. And then the medium. And just pull it. And you can, with the alcohol inks, both pull and push. Like a lot of times with the medium shade, I'll pull like I'm doing. So I'm kind of pulling it out towards where the white is, if you see. This paper doesn't want to let me pull quite as much as I might like, but that's all right. That's kind of a delayed pull, I feel. And then with the very lightest, a lot of times I like to push with that one. There we go. So see, now her skirt has some dimension. This particular pink is a little bit too dark for what I'd ordinarily do, but I think it gives you an idea. I could do certainly a more red one if I wanted to. And I'll show you with some Copics. Like I said, let's take a look. If I did Copic, what did I say? I'd probably use this one, and which one of these was that? That's an earth tone. There's a RV. And I think 1, 2, 3. I think that's going to be lightest. Middle. Yep, I think so. No, I think that was my dark one. I got them messed up. And this one. No, I would actually call this one darkest. Okay. Some people like to keep their caps off and they set them in a cup or whatever. I don't do any of that. I just don't. So if I start with, this one was the lightest. And we'll do some of her skirt over here. And they do it because then they don't have to worry about which cap I think they pull off. And again, I'm just going to do this whole section in the light first. Get it wet. This pink is probably one that could be refilled. It feels a little bit dry, but that's okay. All right, this is going to be darker here where her arm is. This down here be very dark. And just blend it out. Keep getting my nib tips here. Light one, kind of pull some of that forward a little bit more, especially with the alcohol markers. I always like to do multiple layers, and most people who do Copic coloring would tell you that that is what you should do, just to really get kind of the intensity of lightness and darkness that you're trying to achieve. Good blending while the inks are nice and wet. All right, and I'm just pulling and blending. And then this one. And this kind of middle part, I'm barely putting color on because I want it to look really light. So there's that. Right, this blends a little bit different than that, I think, but like I said, I think some of that was just the color. So let's try her hair with these, because I think I've got some nice colors for hair options that are pretty close together. So I think hazelnut, marigold, and this praline, I think, will work really well for her hair. Because I'm not personally super happy with the pinks, just because that one was so dark. Right, and again, I'm just going to test them. So this is pretty dark. What is this? Hazelnut. This is praline. It's a little bit lighter for sure. And this one is very yellow. Okay. So I wonder if I want to go that yellow or if this sand color might be better. So I don't know if I want, yeah, I like the sand better. I don't think I want it quite that yellowy. So, right, always good to kind of test it and figure out what you want to do. And I'll start with, this one was my darker one. And just like this one, I think is going to be mostly dark. I'm not going to color in the whole thing, right? Because I want the ink to stay wet so it blends out more. So just little chunks. And then with the next color and just pull it. And it's okay to put, it's working better. I wasn't putting enough pressure. It's okay to put a little pressure on the marker. I forget that sometimes. And different tips, different marker tips just work different. Some of them take that pressure a little bit better. These ones need a little bit more pressure to pull it. It's blending much better now that I'm putting some force behind my marker pull. So don't be afraid to mash those nibs a little bit. That was, I think, one of my first downfalls when I was using these types of markers, is that I was not being bold enough with my pressure when I was pushing and pulling. You just don't think like, oh, I can really mash on this and it's gonna work. Same thing with the push. Just put a little weight on it. So I would say that for sure, Marley. Make sure you're putting enough pressure on your marker to have it kind of push and pull the other ink. That makes a big difference. Yeah, look at that. Way better. Way, way, way. Plus, I think these colors are more compatible. All right, so I'm going to go in again and just add a little bit more. Kind of shadow in here. Texture. And this is relaxing. I love this. All right, this paper is bleeding through a little bit, but that's just not going to worry about it. That up. There we go. What do you think of that, Marley? Are you able to get some shading in there? That's the best way to use these markers, is a little bit of shading. I'm gonna do, I think, a little bit of her face too. Let's see, what could we do with her face? I've got this, and maybe, what did I use here last time? This. I might not use, you don't always have to use 3 colors if you don't have them. This set, I'm feeling like it doesn't need 3, although I could do a sand, that same sand, I think, if I really wanted to. Not my favorite, but I could, but I'm not going to. So again, if I wanted to do her arm, let's just do, I'm going to do this one because that other one got a little bleeding on it. There we go. Not need a lot of shadow on her arm. There's not a lot of wrinkles or anything in it. This is a good way for you to kind of see single color and just what the layering does too. All right, so the more I put down, even though it's the same shade, the darker this will be, right? I've got some nice kind of light shading in there without even doing a whole lot of additional colors. Just blend it, blend it, blend it. There we go. See, if I put a little, let's put a little sand on here. I've changed my mind now. Just to give it a little bit more kind of peachy tone. Oh, that made it a lot darker. But I think it also looks peachier, right? Just blend stuff. It doesn't matter. All right, now I'm going to actually put a little more pink on it. But it does look a little more fleshy. Right, and it just gives me the ability to blend and make a whole new color. There you go. Oh, Yvette uses the colorless blender. Yes. Yes, I agree. Colorless blender is super handy. I don't have one in this Blick set that I got from Marley, but I do have a Copic colorless blender, right? The colorless blender is a 0. And I do use that a lot, right? Just to kind of pick up, like even where it, you know, bleeds out a little bit. You can use it to, this is probably too dry, but you can use it to pick up and lighten up spots. I think they're all pretty interchangeable. All right, if I wanted to get this to blend out a little bit more. But yep, I've done that too, especially when I'm doing really small things like this. Where was it? I don't know, what did I do with it? If I'm using alcohol ink on something like this, because it's so tiny, any little bleeding gets kind of annoying to me. So I would, if I was using an alcohol marker, I would probably use the colorless blender a lot if it was bleeding out and I needed to pick it up. It is like an eraser. Yes. So there you go. There's my coloring tips for the day. I like your tip, Yvette. Kind of use this as an eraser. That's a good call for sure. That was one of the big selling points when I bought these Copics, was when they started talking about this colorless blender. So I thought, what about if I go out of the lines, or it bleeds, or I, you know, bump something and mess it up? And they said, you know, use your colorless blender. I'll even show. See how well it works with this paper. All right, there's that. And my colorless blender probably needs a little bit of juice too, but hopefully you can see. This is a pretty dark color, but it is picking up. Yeah, I should probably invest in a new one. It's a little dry, but it is picking up that color. It's a little bit lighter there. Hopefully you can see that. Sometimes you got to work it a little bit. What is it in here? I think it's just probably just alcohol. Is that what the colorless blender is, Yvette? Like, can I open this up and just pour some alcohol in here? I don't know. It might be just alcohol, but I probably wouldn't hurt to have a new one. Does Marley have a colorless blender? Probably not, because she has this set, and I don't think there's a colorless blender in this set. Blick probably makes one. Most companies that make alcohol markers do, but it wasn't in this set. So you could go online and look and see if they have one. And I can look too, because like I said, this colorless blender needs a little rejuvenation. It's a little bit dried out. But these are, as I noted before, refillable. You pull the way these are refillable is that you can pull, I don't think you pull that end, I think you pull this end. You pull this out, and then there's a little bottle of ink that you pour in my Copics. I've had these probably for, I don't know, a long time, maybe 12, 13 years, maybe? Probably 12? Yeah, 12 or 13. No, maybe, I think 12. 12 feels right. And so I've had them a really long time. And some of them just get used more than others, and they just, you know, over time eventually kind of dry out. And my lighter ones seem to be the ones that have dried out more. Like this one's a little bit dry. My yellows are bad. I do a lot of skin tones, so those probably could use a little recharge. But I haven't bought those inks yet. Or my refills. I just bought this new fancy set instead. So, flip your tip. Yes. I think so. It pushes the ink into the paper. Flip it. Oh, yeah, yeah. There you go. That's a good idea. Just flip it. And I wonder if even, like if I look at this end, my chisel nib, because I don't use it as much. Oh yeah, and my chisel nib even is butter, right? So this is doing a much better job of picking up, right? So you can see. But that doesn't, when it dries, it's even, because now it's a little bit wet. You can see more of a pickup there. Oh, flip the paper. What's the paper gonna do? You think it's gonna work with just flipping the paper? Thanks for laughing at me. I don't know. I don't know if it made much of a difference. It almost seems like it's bleeding out more. But there you go. All right. So there we go. We did some fun coloring, right? We played around and tried some things with alcohol markers. Marley, I hope you were able to do some. I'd love for you to, no, the blender pushes the ink to the back of the paper. Ah, got it. Got it. So that pushes it through. That's where it goes. Marley, hopefully you tried with your markers. You're welcome. I would love to see a picture if you get one done or you want to send me a sample. I'd love to see how you're doing with your shading, my dear. So there's markers and there's colored pencil. And I did, this was watercolor pencil. This was regular pencil, just to try couple different types. I think that was fun. It's always good to play with. When I use the alcohol-based markers, I always feel like I need to practice more, just because, like I said, it's really, you have to figure out how hard to push or pull with your particular marker brand, what colors are going to blend right and not get muddy, how they're working on the paper. So I feel like it takes a little bit more practice for me personally than the pencil. The pencil's pretty intuitive and easy for me. But I have seen people, you did it, yay. I have seen, we should have a coloring party, Mom. I think that's a great idea. We'll have to do that some night. I think it'd be fun to all be on camera on Zoom and color together. For sure. Good relaxing thing to do. Someday we can go to your house, Mom, and we can all color there with all your amazing coloring. That would be fun too. All right, ladies, that is it for me. I think we'll call it a night. I don't know what I will do for next Wednesday's Try It Tuesday, or yeah, next Tuesday's Try It Tuesday, not Wednesday. So if you have any ideas, certainly feel free to share them. But I know I had fun. It's always great to see you three, and we will talk soon. Good night.